There's no place on earth like Israel, and no better way to see the Holy Land than with SkyWatch TV. If there's a place in Israel that's like the Alamo to Texans here in the United States, it would have to be Masada.
That's a really good way to explain it, because I would venture to say that there are many Christians who know their Bible that still don't really understand what Masada was all about, because in many ways our Bible ends at AD 90 or so. Yes, we get a peek into the very end of days, but the history itself, it ends before Masada happened.
Well, yeah, it ends with the letters of Paul, so the book of Acts and then the epistles really conclude before AD 70 with the fall of Jerusalem.
Exactly.
And then Masada fell 3 years later.
And then John was writing in about AD 90, so that's about the last historical point that we get.
Right.
Eschatologically, it's different, but yeah, Masada it's this incredible place that King Herod had built as his last redoubt.
He didn't have the most secure position, and he wasn't the most trusting individual. Murdered a number of his own family members because they were conspiring against him. They're all against me.
It's like a Shakespearean play.
It kind of is. But he was Idumean, an Edomite,
yes,
who had accepted, at least nominally, the Jewish faith in order to rule over Judea with the blessing of Caesar Augustus. He was really Octavian's man in the Middle East.
That is absolutely the truth. And interestingly enough, being an Edomite and coming from that idea of living within this desert area and making use of what's there in the landscape, hence later on, you'll see when we go to Petra, that's an Edomite area. The Nabateans weren't Edomite necessarily, but the Herod knew the Nabateans. He grew up knowing their capabilities, and he made use of that.
Politically speaking, the relationship between Herod and his father Antipater and the Nabatean Arabs was complex. Sometimes they were allied, sometimes they were not. There was some intermarriage between the families. Anyway.
That is so true, but we get this location, which it's very, very isolated. You could see why it would be very difficult to assault and siege that area.
It took the Romans months to build a siege ramp, and the remnant of the siege ramp is still up against the side of Masada. The fall of Masada is epic. There's a feature film that's been made of this, which it's based on the story told by Josephus, the Jewish historian, who had taken part in the rebellion. All of his men surrendered except for him. Well, all of his men killed themselves except for him. He surrendered, but he ingratiated himself to the emperor, the future emperor Vespasian, and he wrote a history of the Jewish people, which tells us a lot of what we know about the first century. But bear in mind, Josephus wasn't at Masada, so when he puts words in the mouths of the commanders at Masada, their final speech as they exhort his fellow men to kill their wives and children so they wouldn't become Roman slaves, he was using a bit of artistic license.
He was, but I think he was also using some of the legends. The legends grew up around Masada very quickly because this was a big deal.
Join Sharon and me, our colleagues from SkyWatch TV, Allie Henson and Donna Howell, and our special guest, Messianic Rabbi Zev Porat, as we travel the Holy Land October 3rd through 18th of 2021 with a special, optional 3-day extension to Jordan. Find out more and reserve your place now at skywatchinisrael.com. That's skywatchinisrael.com.